Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. Now it's time for us to dive into our discussion of the day, nutrition and why it matters. In Nigeria today, the importance of nutrition cannot be overstated. With millions facing food insecurity and malnutrition on the rise, our diets have become a matter of life and death. From stunting in children to increased cases of obesity and diet-related illnesses, the nation is confronted with a double burden of malnutrition. Many Nigerians eat to fill their stomach, not just to, nourish their bodies, leading to deficiencies in essential nutrients like iron, protein, and vitamins. Well, now we have joining us in the studio Immaculate Odira. She is a registered dietitian and nutritionist. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, so take us through what, or should I say how the rise in food prices affect average Nigerians and their ability to balance their diet.
Okay. I generally think that the consistent rise in food prices has generally tilted people towards going for convenience instead of what is actually nutritional or what would generally nourish their body. So it makes food less affordable, so they are looking for what would fill them up faster and easier, and then they go for satiety instead of a balanced nutrition or a healthy meal in general. Yes.
So when you say balanced diet, what are the things that we call balanced diet? Because to some I've heard, people saying beans, fish and the rest. But then I saw a report also saying that beans is not part of balanced diet. Please walk us through what exactly are the balanced diet that we need to take, even with the economic situation that we are facing.
Okay, so a balanced diet is a meal that contains all the classes of food, right, at a particular sitting. So when we talk about all the classes of food, we have the basic nutrients, we have the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats and the oil, the vitamins, the minerals, water, and then fiber has also been added to the classes of food. So it means your meal at every sitting should encompass at least all of these classes of food in a whole day. So you need to eat at least one meal from each of these food groups. So we have the nutrients, and then we have different food groups that has been used to classify all these foods. So we have the cereals, we have the fruits, we have the vegetables, we have the fats and oil, we have the meat and meat products as well. So you have to eat from each of those food groups in order to maintain a balanced meal. So beans is also part of a healthy and balanced meal. So it's not out of the picture, but it's just that it has a whole lot of carbohydrates, although it is a plant protein. So a lot of people would think it's a plant protein and then binge on it without knowing that it also contains a certain level of carbohydrate that they also have to be mindful of.
So for morning breakfast, for example, for those that may not be able to afford all these proteins and the diets that we just mentioned, what is the proper breakfast?
Okay, a proper breakfast, I would say, would also depend on an individual's level of activity and who is actually consuming it. So like I've said, the ideal or the idea for having any meal is that it is balanced and it is providing you the nutrients that your body needs. So one can have maybe a cup of tea with a few slices of bread.
For a starter?
Yes, for a start.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people eat more than just,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we have someone that does a heavy activity in the morning, maybe for instance, someone that does a lot of lifting jobs in the morning, that they are very active in the morning, you wouldn't expect that person to just have a cup of tea. Obviously. Because it won't suffice. It won't provide them with the actual amount of energy they will need to perform that activity. Yes, so it varies.
So how do cultural food habits affect nutrition outcomes in different parts of Nigeria? Because, every culture has different types of food. So how does that, habit affect the outcomes of what we eat?
When it comes to cultural habits and how people eat based on their culture and their tradition, I would like to say that when it comes to the Nigerian cultural meals, we actually have super healthy and very nutrition and amazing food groups and everything, because most of our local meals, we would always incorporate lots and lots of vegetables in them. It's when we begin to go outside of our local meals, that's when you begin to see a lot of maybe disparities. But yes, it's usually interesting. But I think where we might have a little bit of challenge is usually in the method of preparation, because you see some tribes that would like to add lots of oil in their meal. Like if there's no oil in that food, then that food is not going to be appetizing.
I understand with a whole lot of oil and pepper, lots of people. So how about children? What are the key nutrients children under different ages, because I know it starts from 5 and then above, right? So how can parents provide them the right and affordable nutrients with the kind of food that they can give them? And when you look at the situation, I'll go back to it. What if the families cannot even afford a 3-square meal and they just eat whatever they have? Maybe to some, I've seen families where they take gari in the morning, probably still take gari in the afternoon because that's what they can afford. Can you say it has an effect on them? And then what if they are still giving the same thing to the children as well?
Okay. I think it's the first thing we'd have to consider is how knowledgeable are they? Are they aware of this is when nutrition education comes in? Have they been properly educated? Because when women are pregnant, they would usually go for antenatal classes, and they would usually always teach them on nutrition and the different types of foods that they are supposed to eat for themselves and the baby, and what they are also probably supposed to feed the baby when the baby is born after 6 months, of course. Yes, all right. So if they had gone through that process, they would be able to understand what the varieties of food to be able to give to the child to provide that nutrient. But for a growing child, one of the major or the most important nutrient that would always look out for is the proteins, because the proteins are the body building foods that what helps the child to develop all the bodily functions and grow better. So I think that's why the Nigerians normally would usually hear, oh, you need to eat beans so that you can grow tall. If you don't eat beans, just because of that high protein that protein has.
Yeah, so how can malnutrition be detected early, especially from home, before you even exceed to take children to the hospital?
Okay, so there are growth charts that are in place in order to monitor the proper child, a proper child's growth. So there are different parameters that has been set over a standard that says, okay, averagely at a certain age or at a certain period of time, this child is supposed to be probably this tall or probably this big. So if by that period the child is not that tall or that big, then we'll begin to consider, okay, what is happening? Is it genetics, or is it that the child is not getting enough nutrients, or the child is not eating well? So there are parameters that are used to assess this.
So how important is nutrition, to brain development and academic performance? Because a lot of times children go to school, they've not eaten, and so they don't tend to apprehend what they're being taught in classes. So how important is nutrition to their development and performance?
It is actually very important. Apart from the development and all, it is very important for basic bodily function, because everything that happens in the body stands on the standard of nutrients. They help brain function, brain development. So yes, it is quite important in that aspect.
So how about your thoughts on government school feeding programs? I mean, we've seen some governments tending to, make sure that they do these feeding programs in schools, which I think a while back there was a bill that was passed that they should be feeding in schools. What do you think about that? Do you think that would also help in some way?
Yes, it's going to improve the nutritional intake of these children, especially with the instance that you've given that some children would usually probably leave home without having breakfast or having a meal. So it would help in increasing how much a child is able to get. And then it's also important that these nutrition or school feeding programs also incorporate nutritionists in the planning of those meals, just to ensure that the meals actually meet the nutritional needs of the children, so that you're not just feeding hungry people, you're actually making sure you are addressing a specific issue.
Yeah, so how about young youths and adults? Because when we want to look at the eating habits of the youths nowadays, junks especially, has taken over a whole lot. We don't look at the what we eat. There are a lot of cheese, fatty, food and what have you. So how, what are the mistakes that youths are making today when it comes to balancing their diets and the nutrition that they intake?
Okay. I would say that when it comes to habit is something that you have done over time, so you're generally used to it. So sometimes it is things that we do right from childhood, things that we grew up with. So if you grew up in a home that does not really encourage a lot of all these soda and pastries, maybe as an appreciation, when your child does well, they are getting him a soda or something. By the time you are in your adolescence or adult or young adults, you would be able to still maintain most of those practices, and it would be a bit difficult for you to digress to unhealthy eating. But I think most people focus on that because of how easy it is to access, because when you go to when you have all those junks, you don't bother about maybe reheating it, preparing it again. It's just you take and then you consume. So how easy it is for you to just get it and then start consuming it. I think that is one of the things they look out for.
Yeah, it's actually really sad that you're saying this, because I'm sure a whole lot of people watching, you're touching on things that they need to do. But how does poor nutrition contribute to common lifestyle diseases that we already know, like diabetes, like hypertension, and even ulcer?
Okay, poor nutrition would usually contribute to these conditions. Why? Because you're not getting in as much nutrient as your body needs, especially in the case of fiber. Because that initially I mentioned that fiber has been included as one of the classes of food or classes of nutrient. Yeah, because you realize that when people delve into the eating a lot of junks, they are indirectly eliminating fiber, because most of all this fast food does not incorporate as much fiber as the body would need to stay fit or to stay healthy or be able to maintain health. Because fiber does a whole lot. It helps in GIT motility, it helps for proper bowel movement, it helps to prevent unnecessary absorption of a whole lot of things. So it's like garbage in, garbage out. So that now predisposes one to having an excess of a lot of things, absorbing a lot of carbohydrates, eating high fatty foods, and also eating a lot of saturated fats.
So when you say fiber, for those that don't understand, what are the foods that contains fiber that the system needs?
Okay.
That has the the level of nutrient that every system should even have. It doesn't matter the age level. When you say fiber, what are the food that we need to take that has fiber, that has the protein that we need, that has the nutrients that we need, aside from vegetables that you mentioned? Also fruits. What are the things that people should take more frequent?
Okay. So these days, as nutritionists and dietitians, we are beginning to preach more of a wholesome diet. So a wholesome diet is a meal that incorporates more of whole foods. That's foods that have not been overly processed or that have not been processed and packaged. So eat more of those foods, because
like
those,
what and what?
Okay, we have our fruits. Fruits are one of the they have loads of fiber in them.
So like what kind of fruits?
Yeah. Any fruit actually.
Okay.
So we have soluble and insoluble fiber. So we have our apples, mangoes, especially the skin of the fruits. Those are where the fiber is usually in. Then we have our vegetables, our local green leafy vegetables, ugu, bitter leaf, water leaf, scent leaf, and then we also have some other vegetables like carrots, cabbage, garden eggs, cucumbers that are also rich in fiber. Then our plants sources of foods as well, as long as they've not been processed processed and sieved to take away the fiber, then it's usually always rich
when
in
you say
fiber.
processed, you're talking about, let's say, the GMOs?
Yeah.
Sort of?
not necessarily the GMOs, but processing in the sense that it has been refined. For instance, refining wheat into flour and semo powder. You know, that way it has taken away the fiber. Yes, so it's very fine and smooth. There's no
Parts
roughage.
Which I totally understand.
Yes.
You know, so I have to keep asking you, so for the sake of those watching. But then another thing that, you know, it's just cracking in my head and making me laugh is because I know I'm going to touch on so many things, parts where a lot of people, even me, I'm a victim of that. What are the healthier alternatives to popular street foods that we tend to eat? You know, like pop-off, you know, indomie, suya, even zobo. You know, because these are things that we take regularly. You go for weddings, when you go to weddings, you see zobo, you see some making suya, you know, and what have you. So even the pop-off is part of, you know, small chops that is being called. So what are other alternatives, healthier alternatives do you think we have?
Okay. Before I talk about the alternative, I would like to talk about one thing we also preach so much in dietetics, which is moderation. So when you consume whatever you're consuming, consume them in moderation. Don't overdo it. Just make sure you understand what a balanced meal is, and then you don't overconsume. Then when it comes to healthier options for these things, one of the major things we try to also look at is the method of preparation. What have you used in preparing this? For instance, you mentioned zobo. Zobo is actually a very nutritious and healthy drink, right? But now when people make it, they now tend to sweeten it. Yes, so it is now the sweetener or the choice of sweetener that now either makes it unhealthy or healthy. Because if you don't have to make it so sweet, like super sweet, but there are also fairer choices of sweeteners, maybe using a fruit instead of adding plain sugar.
I've seen people put pineapple, watermelon, cucumber, and the rest.
Exactly. So using those options, and then you realize that when you take those ones, they are not usually as sweet as the ones that has been sweetened with sugars and all, and it still comes out nice, and then you understand that you still get all the nutritional benefits that you're supposed to get instead of loading your body or your system with more sugar that is just going to translate.
So for suya also, you know, because they tend to put cabbage and cucumber and the rest
to balance it out.
So you talked about the methods and what have you. How do you even determine when, you know, you don't know how they've washed it? They've already sliced it into your suya or whatever it is you're buying. What can you do afterwards when you take it, probably to just, you know, prevent yourself from any health risks that may cause you? For example, for those that have ulcer, you know, they're not supposed to have oily stuff, peppery stuff, and what have you. So immediately for those that have, you know, the appetite to take suya and the rest, what are the necessary things they need to do to stay healthy?
Okay, I think
because I know that red meat, they said is too much of it is bad.
Yes, because it has lots of so like I said, moderation. You consume everything in moderation. So what I would advise individuals that would usually enjoy consuming sugar is to be mindful of where they buy their suyas, right? Because all the conventional suya makers, or it's grilled meat, right? Grilling is actually is a very healthy way of preparing your meals, because it actually but then at the end of the day, we still see them spraying some oil on top to make it shiny and stuff. So that increases the amount of oil that is in that meal. So if we can, if they can be able to make more conscious effort, or have a decision, or be able to decide on what is added to the suya, or better still, make it at home. You can always make it at home. That way you are sure of what you're making and all, and whatever you're washing in. But at the end of the day, it's super hard to say, oh, don't eat street food. So just ensure that you've assessed the area, at least looking at the environment where the suya seller is. You would be able to decide if you should trust them with you.
You know, at the end of the day, you know, like I said, we are touching on what people are not expecting us to touch on. How can, you know, our balanced diet, you know, a healthy balanced diet, how can it affect our mental health, our energy level, and productivity?
Okay.
Because, you know, when there are certain food that you eat that brightens your day, that makes your mood, you just be happy. When they are bringing the food, you already does. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of videos of people can't wait for their food to come because they already are, you know, looking forward to it. And also, how does it, you know, affect our mental health and then the energy levels, like I talked about, and even our productivity?
Okay, so like I've mentioned, the basic nutrients in food, carbohydrates, which its major function is an energy-giving food. So carbohydrates, protein, and fats, they are all energy-giving foods. So when consumed in the right proportion, they will definitely provide the body with the amount of energy that the body needs to perform basic function. So each nutrient has what they are providing the body with. So yes, it would help with mental health or you state, because sometimes when you're hungry you realize that you're down, your system is not able to function properly. Sometimes you can even have slight headache and stuff. Yes, so having a balanced meal or a nutritious meal would usually boost your day and boost your energy levels.
So why are doctors, or should I say doctors always telling people to take apples probably before they go to bed, or even milk? Why are these things important, especially for those maybe that cannot sleep? I've seen people say, oh, if you can't sleep, just take an apple. You know, they say apple a day keeps you away from the doctor. So a lot of things around that, you know, even eggs. I've seen people say, oh, don't take too much egg. It's going to make you bloated. It's going to make you this and that. So why do we need to take apples? Why do we need to take milk to make us help us to sleep and rest?
Okay, so I would say that when we talk about the apple, it's still in the line of trying to encourage people to, you know, eat more fruits or stay healthier. So sometimes apple is like the golden fruit, because once you think about a fruit, the first example that would usually come to your mind would be apple. For instance, in the alphabet, A is for apple. Yes, so apple is like the golden fruit. So once you think about a fruit, you're talking about apple. So I wouldn't say it's basically specific to just an apple. There could be other fruits that one can consume to help that. And then fruits are usually, they are lighter meals, they are not energy dense. So it would help you sleep. Would it help you sleep better? It might, just because it doesn't have a lot of energy. So it is calorie dense, and having such or that kind of a meal for dinner or at night would actually help you sleep better, because it helps your system, it allows your system to rest generally. So your system is not working, trying to break down the meals that you've eaten. Instead, you just have a light meal and then you go to bed, and then it's easier.
So which is supposed to come first when you want to balance your diet? Is it the fruits? You take the fruits first before you eat, or you eat before you take the fruits? Because I've seen people, you know, missing and getting in between the line of, oh, I have to take fruits before I eat, or I have to eat before I take fruit. So which comes first? Which should come first?
Okay. So I would say that deciding what comes first is, you would have to ask yourself why. So why are you eating the fruits? It is the why that will determine which comes first, and then also your health condition at that state. So for someone, you've mentioned ulcer, for someone that has ulcers, there are some certain kinds of fruits that they shouldn't eat. So they should not even think about eating it at all before meal. For instance, some acidic fruits like maybe apples, oranges, pineapples as well, because they're too sour, so they can irritate the ulcers. Yes, so they shouldn't eat them before a meal. They should even try to avoid them at all. But if they want to go for it, they can have it after they have had a meal, and the effect is usually insignificant because there's already something in the system.
So what are the kind of fruits that ulcer patients should be eating if they're not going to take the ones that you just mentioned?
Okay, so we have bananas, we have mangoes, we have pears, avocado, pear. Yeah, we have pawpaw, we have watermelon, but for some of them we could still take our watermelon. But yes, these fruits can still serve us. Yes,
you know, for some that are stubborn, they'll tell you, oh, I can't do without taking pineapple, the apple, and the rest. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Immaculate Odira, for taking out your time to be on the show, and for your contribution, of course, because I'm sure a lot of people must have learned one or two things from you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, this our conversation with Immaculate Odira on nutrition. I'm sure, like I said, you've learned one or two things, and you know how to balance your diet at this point. At least try every day if you can. You know, mangoes are everywhere at this point. You know, oranges are everywhere. A lot of things that already grows naturally that, you know, it can save you the cost of going to the market and, you know, spending your money and what have you. So please stay safe and stay healthy. Well, let's go on a quick break. And when we return, we'll take a look at some entertainment stories and what is actually happening in the industry.